Hello, everyone. I'm going to do the presentation now. And again, first of all, I'd like to thank the Aboitiz group for inviting the Hendrix Genetic Swine as one of the speakers for the Agriconnect webinar. I think this is their episode 3 of season 2. In behalf of Hendrix Genetic Swine, again, thank you so much for the Aboitiz group. My topic is about good Gilt management towards a productive sow herd. I'd like to introduce first myself. I'm Dr. Gladwin Tibon Señase. I'm a veterinarian by profession, and I am based here in the Philippines, but I'm doing technical support for Maritime Southeast Asia, and it covers the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia. So I've been working in the swine industry, mainly in the breeding companies, for more than 17 years already. So that's a short introduction of myself. I have to introduce also our company, the Hendrix Genetic Swine. So we have around 450, more than 450 employees worldwide, and we are present in 8 countries with our own facilities. And also we have market or presence in the market in over 48 countries worldwide. And we have also over 30 geneticists and technical support staff. We have also veterinarians. And currently, we have more than 20 nucleus breeding centers with high health status. And these nucleus farms are spread all over Europe, North America, and also some parts of Asia. And with the merger and acquisition of Danish Genetics, we now have 10 product lines and 4 differentiated sire lines and 2 F1 or hybrid dam lines and 4 GP dam lines. All in all, we have more than 120 years of activity in swine breeding and formed by multiple acquisition and mergers. And currently in our inventory, we have more than 17,000 GG animals for breeding. And this slide we can show here our presence in worldwide. So we have customer base in North America and South America, also all over Europe, and also many parts of Asia, including China, Philippines, and also its neighboring countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand, and also Indonesia. And again, as what I've said before, recently we had a merger between Hypor and Danish Genetics. So now we are called the Hendrix Genetic Swine. So our goal is to create a global leader with support from strong partners. So with the merger, now we have the Danish portfolio, the Danish Genetics portfolio. We have the Duro for the sire line, and also the dam line breeds, the Danish Landrace, and the Danish Yorkshire, and also the F1, the Danish hybrid sows. And we also retain still the Hypor portfolio with Hypor Maxter boars, and we have the Hypor Magnus. This is one Duruk boar, and also Hypor Canto, which is another Duruk boar. And we also have our dam lines, the Hypor Large White, and Hypor Landrace, and the Hypor Libra. Now we have this combined product promise. So the Hendrix Genetic Swine is proud to announce the development of a cutting-edge F1 sow, combining the best traits of Hypor and Danish genetics. This F1 sow will carry the superior traits of both the Hypor and Danish genetics. And this F1 sow will be called the Nexus. I'm going to go directly to the to my topic, the good Gilt management towards a productive sow herd. We are faced with the question, why are Gilts so important? So the Gilts are important because they are the largest breeding group. They comprise about 17 to 20% or more in some cases in our breeding herd. If we remember the parity structure in the breeding herd, the largest number of animals in there are the Gilts. Another importance of the Gilts are their litter size, because the litter size of the Gilts during parity 1 can define a lifetime litter size. So I'm going to expound on this later with some data that I'm going to show to you. Gilts also can replace a sow that has a poor performance. So again, we don't have to keep those old sows or poor performing sows, but then we have to replace them with Gilts that have high potential. Of course, the Gilts, they are young, they are properly selected. So we select them with more than 14 functional teeth. Another importance of the gilts is the challenge they present in terms of immunity, lethal birth weight, excessive body weight at first breeding, feed intake in the following, and also the weaning to service interval duration at weaning time. So I'm going to explain to you later about this last importance also. Now let's look at the data that I mentioned a while ago. Are P1 results correlated with lifetime performance? So how does the performance at parity 1 define the lifetime performance of a Gilt or a sow? Let's look at the data provided by Pinilla and Canavetti in 2013, performance by parity. On the numbers on the left side, on the vertical, we can see the litter size total born, and on the numbers below the graph, or in the horizontal line, are the parity. So gilts at parity 1 that give birth to, for example, 14, 16, or 17 piglets total born, during their lifetime, they still maintain a high litter size. So as we can see here, they might have small dip in litter size at parity 2, but then they increase to in parity 3 and maintain a high litter size up to parity 5 and so on. However, those gilts that have a litter size of just 8 or 10 or 11 or low litter size at parity 1, they maintain a low litter size on the succeeding parities. So showing this a gilt with only 8 total born litter size, on the second parity, it increased to 12, but then their litter size on the lifetime or the succeeding parities are still low. So again, that's the importance of the litter size of the gilt at first parity. So now let's look at the optimum parity distribution. So this is also one of the parameters or one of the areas that as technical support, we try to evaluate at the farm if what is the parity distribution of the breeding herd. This is very important because we can see here if the farm is a productive farm or are they doing the right replacement program. So in here we can see is that parity 0 or the gilts, they have the most number of sows, close to 20%. And the older sows, around parity 7 older, they should have the least number of animals, around 5% should remain in the farm. So again, we can only achieve the optimum parity distribution if we have a good culling and replacement program. Not only good, but regular culling and replacement program. So that means we have to have replacement gilts coming in every week to replace our old and poor performing sows and also our mortalities or problem sows. It's also very important to note here that the most productive sows are in parity 3 to 5 and should comprise 35% of the herd. This graph shows us the born alive difference per parity. So this will show us why is it important or why is parity 3 to 5 the most productive parity. So this compares the born alive of older parities versus parity 1. So as we can see here, the difference in litter size or the born alive of parity 3, 4, and 5 is much higher compared to parity 1 as compared to the difference in the litter size or the total born of those in parity 2 and especially the older sows in parity 7. So again, that's the reason why we have to have 35% of our sows in parity 3 to 5 because they are the most productive parity. We don't want our sows to be in the high percentage of parity 7 and above because we know that the parity 7 and above, they already produce a low litter size. And also we can see here that it's just a little bit, actually 0.4, 0.5 more than the litter size of the gilt. So a good gilt management starts with a gilt selection. First is that we have to choose, or the farmers who choose gilts from a genetic supplier, wherein its breeding programs prioritize traits that contributes to sow longevity and overall system profitability. So again, it's very important for a farmer to consider who will be the genetic supplier for his farm. We don't want that as a farmer that we just buy gilts from everywhere and from different sources. We have to have a supplier, a genetic supplier that has a reliable breeding program that focus on genetic improvement by selecting for stability, winning capacity, and reproductive efficiency. Number two is that females or the gilts should be selected with proper conformation. So we have to choose gilts that have good physical conformation, free from evident problems that may affect productivity and longevity. The number three, we have to ensure absence of health issues or lameness. So this is also another important requirement, wherein if you buy gilts, you have to know the health status of the source farm. Some farmers even require specific tests before they buy gilts. Number four, gilts with proper growth, weight, and back fat. So the gilt should not be overdeveloped or underdeveloped animals. Now let's talk about the importance of retention rate. Again, we have to know what is retention rate. Retention rate is an excellent indication of herd performance and sow lifetime productivity. It is accepted in the industry that the sow must win 3 liters before she pays for herself in the herd. Sows that are culled at a younger age or less than parity 3 negatively impact farm profitability. The better the management of sows, particularly the replacement kills, the higher the retention rate and the lower the involuntary carrying rate. Stable, or in this graph, sorry, we can see here the retention rate of the Hendrix genetics gilts. Almost more than 98% were inseminated from the gilts that were brought into the farm. And out of the more than 98% of the gilts, close to 80% have reached parity 3, So again, it says here that sows that are culled at a younger age or less than parity 3 negatively impact farm profitability. That's why you have to choose a genetic supplier that has stability or sow longevity as one of its selection rate. That's part of the selection process. So in here we have just to show you the gilt selection parameters when we do the selection of the farm. So there's a scoring system for the legs, also for the overall body structure, and also selection for the teats. So just to show you also an example of the good and bad body structure. So you can see here on the upper left picture, the bad body structure with the arches back combined with steep front and hind legs, straight pasterns and short claws. So in this kind of animal, as opposed to legged, so the gait is not good. So it is prone to lameness, especially when it becomes pregnant. However, in the picture in the lower right shows us the good structure, good body structure with a straight backbone and good quality feet and legs. So it's very important for a gilt to have strong legs, especially when she becomes pregnant. Now let's talk about another method in gilt management. It's called quarantine and acclimatization. So incoming gilts can experience a significant health challenge when they enter the herd. So that's why they are placed first in the isolation or the quarantine barn. So the quarantine and adaptation period, preferably a minimum of 6 weeks, provides the opportunity for acclimatization and gradual building of immunity. Ideally, the farm should have isolation facility, or we call it the quarantine barn, and it should be far from the main herd or located far from the main herd and should be managed as an entirely separate unit. So during the quarantine acclimatization, timely vaccinations are administered. In some cases, and also based on historical diagnostic results from individual farm, a preventive antibiotic treatment can be advisable. So normally we give antibiotic either in the water or in the feeds when the gilts arrive at the recipient farm, just to have a preventive medication. Also, we do the deworming and gradual exposure to disease in the recipient herd so that the gilts do not become ill. So in this procedure, We use organic material from the recipient farm. So we use the manure and we gradually place it in the quarantine barn to expose the gills to the pathogen from the farm. And later on, we use the animals. It could be old sows or the teaser boar. Again, feeds and feeding is also another important method or management practice in good gilt development. So a gilt developer diet should be fed to the gills. So it should be fed between entry to the quarantine and the breeding. So due to the higher mineral content, including calcium and phosphorus, which support stronger bone structure and development. So that's why, again, gilts have a good or strong musculoskeletal system development so that she can carry a bigger weight when she becomes pregnant. Another method that we advise is flushing or the ad libitum feeding 5 to 7 days before the expected insemination date. So in here, we full feed the gills. We give them more than 3 kilos, or if possible, more than 4 kilos of feeds per day. So this have a direct effect on the ovulation rate of the gills. To enhance the appetite of the gills, we can also add to the feeds around 200 to 250 grams of sugar or dextrose powder per day just to enhance the appetite. Also, it's very important to provide clean drinking water all the time. Now let's talk about pen adaptation. So what is pen adaptation? So the gills normally in the quarantine or in the isolation barn are placed in group pens. However, before insemination, they are now moved to the gestation barn. And as we all know, mostly in our gestation barns, the animals are placed in individual pens. So gills before they are inseminated should be placed in individual pens or individual crates in the gestation or breeding barn, ideally for 3 weeks before the first insemination. This will give more time for the gills to be adapted to the individual pens, and it will not affect the feed intake of the gills 1 week prior to the insemination. And some farms already are using a group housing system in the gestation barn with electronic self-feeding stations, or we call it ECF feeders. So if the farm is doing this kind of system, the gills should also be trained to the electronic self-feeders, the feeding stations before they are placed in before they are inseminated. Environment. So the gills also have environmental requirement. Lighting is very important to stimulate the onset of estrus. So the gills need approximately 300 lux at eye level of the eye level. Then they need 16 hours of light per day. So for example, the sun rises at 6 a.m. So they have already light inside the barn, and you have to extend the light if it's 16 hours, and you have to turn off the light at around 10 p.m. Then the barn temperature should be maintained ideally at 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. It's a challenge actually here in tropical climate because of the high temperature. But then we have also farms that are already in climate controlled system. So the coolest that we can get, if not around 18 to 20, so the lowest temperature that we can achieve would be already comfortable or ideal to the gills. Not the temperature that's so hot that could affect the condition of the gills and cause so much stress to them. So this is a requirement also for gills to have a good stocking density. So you have to place the exact number or not too much gills inside the pen to avoid injuries or fighting between the gills. So just follow the right stocking density, which also can affect the growth of the animals. Of course, ideally, concrete slats are better because they are more sturdy, and also it will maintain dryness of the floor, and it should not be slippery for the gills. So just to show you some pictures of the lighting for the gills. So additional lights are placed just above the head of the gills to stimulate the onset of estrus. On the picture on the right are the individual stalls. So the gills should be placed at least 3 weeks prior to insemination. Now let's talk about estrus stimulation. Estrus stimulation is normally done by doing the boar exposure, and it should begin not later than 180 days of age. So that means 24 to 25 weeks old, we have to start now doing the boar exposure. Normally, we use the teaser bore. So each session should last for at least 10 minutes per group of 10 to 15 gilts and must occur preferably twice per day, 7 days a week. So once the first heat cycle is detected, we should mark the gilt, record the day and age, and monitor the regular estrus cycle. This is a common problem or common challenge in the farm is that there is no proper recording of the heat or the estrus period of the animals. So we cannot do a good planning for insemination if we don't keep a good record. So again, you have to create a good or reliable record for your estrus period of the gilts. So doing the bore stimulation or stress estrus stimulation, we need to use the teaser bore. So the teaser bore should be a chatty one, aggressive bore, and older than 10 months. We don't want to use very young boars, and we don't want also to use very old boars because they're not active anymore. So we want a boar that is very active, high libido, teaser bore. And it's also advisable when you're doing stimulation to use more than one boar. So I would suggest to use more than one boar, or if possible, depends on the number of gilts that you have, you can only use maybe 3 boars, 3 teaser boars. For the teaser boars, you have to replace them also annually, maybe around 30 to 50%. You have to cal and replace the teaser boars. So doing stimulation, we have to switch boars regularly. So a set of boars should be doing the stimulation in the morning. Then in the afternoon, another set of boars should be used. So not the same boars all the time. So the reason for this is we need to have a surprise effect every estrus stimulation or every boar exposure. So during the boar stimulation, we can also do the heat detection. However, heat detection should begin immediately after arrival in the quarantine. We can already see gilts that showing signs of estrus. I'm going to mention, or in the succeeding slides, it will be mentioned. So the first weeks after arrival, heat detection might have to be done in the absence of a teaser bore for sanitary reason. So the caretaker can check the gilts if it's showing signs of heat, and also maybe mimic activity of the boar so you can detect if the gilts are in heat. And the number of gilts that show signs of estrus or standing heat should be recorded on the gilt record. Again, person that is or the caretaker that is managing the gilts in the quarantine barn should always keep accurate record of the estrus period of the gilts. Now this is the signs of estrus, so it's divided into the pre-estrus. So during pre-estrus, we can see the swelling of the vulva and possible mucus discharge. And we observe also that the gilts are having reduced appetite and increased activity, so they become very active. We can also see that gilts are riding the back of the other gilts. So in here, we can use the back pressure stimulation to check if the gilts are already in standing heat. Now let's see the signs. We can see if the gilt is in standing heat. So the back pressure response is positive. That means the gilts allow the person to mount her or do the back pressure, this muscular contraction. And we can also observe that the ears and tail are pointing up. And there's also the smelling and chewing behavior. Then we can also hear a vocalization or the gilts are produce a sound that they accept, or vocalization of approval. That means they allow the man to mount during the back pressure test. However, there are also conditions for the gilts at first insemination. So these are the traits below are the eligibility of the gilt before they are inseminated. So if the gilt will not pass these traits or this eligibility, they should not be inseminated yet. So what are the common traits? So for example, the weight. Gilt should be inseminated between 150 to 180 kilograms. age is relevant to the development also of the reproductive system. It should be between 240 to 270 days old. So the back fat level, so again, as I mentioned before, we don't want a gilt that is over conditioned or under conditioned. The gilt should have a minimum of 15 millimeter back fat. And growth also is very important. Gilts with proper growth are also considered fully developed and also have a fully developed reproductive system. Then ADG should be between 600 to 700 grams per day from birth. Then the gilt should have at least 2 recorded heat or estrus period before first insemination. It's also very important to note that any vaccination should be avoided within 3 weeks before the first insemination. So again, meeting these targets for the gilt condition is crucial, and breeding overdeveloped or underdeveloped animals should be avoided. Now let's talk about the insemination steps, especially for the gilts. The gilts at the first insemination, upon detection that the gilts are in heat or in standing heat, immediately the gilts are inseminated. However, the second insemination for the gilts is done between 18 to 24 hours after the first insemination. And if possible, don't move or mix the gilts 30 to 35 days after the insemination. Normally, we recommend that we have to do the pregnancy detection first around 28 to 30 days. So those that are confirmed pregnant, we move to the gestation barn at around 35, 36 days so they can stay there until they are transferred to the following. I'm going to discuss to you about, just to share you the dot stripe cross method of insemination management that we're doing at the farms, in our farms. This is a simple identification method that provides information about the timing of the insemination per sow. The advantages of this method is it's easy to follow, actions in the breeding area. It will help determine if the timing of insemination is correct. Heat check, insemination, and stimulation all in one pass, especially if using cervical or artificial insemination. So what are the conditions when doing that stripe cross method? First is heat check required twice per day, minimum 7 hours in between or interval. Use 2 different color markers, one for morning or AM and another for PM or in the afternoon. All actions are monitored by marking the sows. Dot, which means that the sow is in standing heat. The stripe means that the sow has been inseminated. Cross, the sow is no longer in standing heat. So this is what we can see here, the example of the dot stripe cross method and insemination timeline. So this example, the gilts are weaned on Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Then on Monday morning, around 96 hours after weaning, some sows are already showing standing heat. Okay, for a sow, we have to, if it's found that it's standing heat, we have to put the blue dot, which means standing heat in the morning, but no insemination yet. We delay for around 12 hours. So that means checking again in the afternoon. The sow is in standing heat and we do the insemination. Then we place the red stripe. Then Tuesday morning, we check again the sow. Are they still standing heat? But no insemination is done. Then we put the blue dot. Then on Tuesday afternoon, the sow is still in standing heat. Then we do the insemination, the second insemination. Then we place the red stripe. However, on the Wednesday morning, we do the heat detection again, and we found out that the sow is still in heat. So again, we put the third blue dot. But then in the afternoon, it was no longer in standing heat, so now we put the red cross. That means the sow is no longer in standing heat. So from the time that we place the first dot until the time that we place the red cross, it is the length of the estrus period of the animal. So if you do the dot and stripe cross method, you can have a customized, or we will know how long is the estrus period of your sows in your breeding herd. So that's all for my presentation about good field management. And again, thank you so much for your attention. If you have some questions or clarification, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.